Well, hello again everyone. The Lofi Kalene is back and we have a lot to talk about. We have Arthas, Sylvanas, Jaina, Uther, Anduin, Varian and suffering. What more could we ask for? Along with the question, if the theory of Shadowlands may not actually be the real Death Realm, kind of confirmed, and did Arthas Menethil's legacy to really die, just like Sylvanas stated? Well, let us begin.
Do you not understand? This one is bound to me.
Well, we actually heard quite a similar line during the trailer for Chains of Domination.
No, he is bound to me.
Just as you once sought to bind your own brother.
Yes, he is bound to Zoval, the jailer. But who was the one he actually referred to? Anduin, or the one he has been using to dominate Anduin, Arthas himself? I actually believe he referred to Arthas because, through Arthas, Zoval dominated Anduin. The interesting part though, why did he need that kind of a proxy? He was able to easily dominate Jaina, Troll and Bolvar before with ease.
The way is open so far!
In my opinion, it was to have complete control over Anduin and sustain it. Also to punish Arthas for his failure, as he also punished poor Ner'zhul for failure in Torghast with eternal torment, who we have destroyed or released back in patch 9.1. Speaking of Ner'zhul though, can we take a look at his dying words for a second?
I come.
Where did he go after we supposedly freed his soul? Wasn't the Shadowlands the end? We will talk about this later. Let's continue.
Anduin!
This brief moment, in my opinion, is crucial to understand Sylvanas' character. We remember during Legion and BFA, while they were on the opposite sides, Sylvanas never hated Anduin. If you remember, or if you choose to remember, she tried to convince him to join him in Zoval's side until the last moment, to the point where Zoval's patience reached its limit and they dominated Anduin through Charlemagne, or as we came to know it, Kingsborn. And here, not Uther, not even Anduin's so-called aunt, Jaina, but Sylvanas herself runs into the darkness to death itself in an attempt to save the little lion. We actually still can't be sure if Anduin was dominated by Sylvanas when she stabbed Kingsmorn into his heart or something. But at this point, we should assume that Sylvanas was the one who dominated Anduin. So, Sylvanas actually cares about Anduin, both because she was the reason why Anduin became like this, and unlike you think, she has feelings. When you are an undead, expressing one's feelings may be a bit hard, don't you think? Also, take into account that this Sylvanas is completely new. She is neither the Banshee Queen nor the Ranger General, but both of them. I hope that makes sense for you.
Fulfill your final purpose. Annihilation.
Well, Zoval, or for now, let's call him the jailer, sounds completely evil here, and I liked it. To be honest, I still do believe that the Primus and the Winter Queen were the real villains of this story, or at the least, none of the Eternal Ones, Cresty included, were innocent at all. But when you look at the story in a simpler and more linear way, Zoval was a proper villain. at least in Warcraft standards. Why? Well, he's straight to the point, he wears black armor, he looks ugly, unlike Sir Denatrius for obvious reasons. His entire army, the most worn, also wears completely black, casts dark spells, and somewhat, you get the point. I have been into the Warcraft lore since the days of Warcraft 3, just like most of you guys, and to be honest, I always found Warcraft lacking in creating proper evil villains, especially in recent years. Garrosh, for example, I have to say he did nothing wrong. He was a victim as much as Arthas and Sylvanas. Or think about Illidan. He turned out to be the anti-hero, but Zoval is straight and cruel, and I find that refreshing. I actually can compare him with the cruelty of the Naga and the Old Gods, whom I hope we will see more about in the future. I can easily put Zoval into the same category of Gul'dan and Kil'jaeden if Blizzard would not surprise us with the plot twist I expect next week and push him into the point of no return. Let's keep going.
The fate of all who carry my blade. My son. This blade does not belong to darkness. It was forged by valor. And also by honor. Its legacy and ours are with you, even here. Now, let it be finished.
We have the first plot twist of the cinematic, with lots of references to Legion and Battle for Azeroth. First, we hear Varian saying the iconic lines of Warcraft, just as he did at the beginning of his letter to Anduin during the Legion opening cinematic.
My son, a terrible darkness has returned to our world.
And in the case of Saurfang, in my opinion, that shows even the death of Saurfang back in BFA had a purpose. Still, most of the player base deny how Legion, Battle for Azeroth, and Shadowlands was a single arc, as I have been saying for months, and so planned it in advance years before. Not the presence of Varian, but Saurfangs prove that everything happened since Legion served a purpose. Seeing Varian's soul, or likely Echo, coming to help his son when he needed him the most was kind of expectable, but Saurfang was a proper twist. And you see, Saurfang took Charlemagne back in the Reckoning cinematic, split it into two, and fought against Sylvanas. For that reason, Charlemagne kept the Echo of Saurfang, and when the right time came, the Echo stood up to help Anduin. But how?
Walk with me the rest of the way.
The thing is, Charlemagne is an interesting weapon. Nothing much known about its origins, but according to Wikipedia, Shalator and Elemain were a pair of magic elven blades forged during the War of the Ancients and wielded by the twins of Vorlilian and Lovelian. In Darnesian, Shalator means Shadowrender, while Elemain means River. While Elemain had a red gem, Shalator had a blue one instead. And this was all the information I managed to gather about the origins of the blade. So as you see, it's a very special one, and after this fateful moment of reunion, what happens?
Is this all that remains of him?
The last flicker of his scarred spirit, consumed in the forges of the jailer.
And who to start with here? Let us talk a bit about Arthas first. Arthas was one of my childhood heroes, and he was probably one of the most important characters in Warcraft history for me. And I guess a great bunch of the player base would agree with me. We cannot get into the entire story of Arthas here, otherwise the video would become a 2 hours long one. But while Arthas was one of the coolest quote-unquote villains of the Warcraft universe, there were two characters that failed him and led him to the path meant for him by the Matrism. Uther, his mentor, a friend of his, felt only anger and disgust during their final encounter. Yes, you can argue that he was right to hate Arthas, as his entire kingdom fell in ruins in just a matter of days by the prince he held dear, but even Uther himself regrets it. Again, I don't want to make you rewatch the entire questline of patch 9.1, a new patch, but just to remind you so. Uther realizes that he, the first paladin of the Silver Hand himself, forgot one of the core tenets of the Paladin Order.
These tenets.
The three virtues. Respect, tenacity, and then compassion. Seeing beyond our differences, understanding our similarities, feeling for those who suffer, even if... Oh, Arthas. Nervous, Arthas? This is the day Arthas became a paladin. I remember it well.
Honestly, yes. I see your devotion to the light and feel doubt cloud my heart. You taught me so much, Uther, but I sometimes wonder if I'm truly meant to walk this path.
In truth, Arthas actually wasn't meant to become a paladin. His personality wasn't fit for a paladin. At least not entirely. He was hot-headed and ready to use aggressive methods when it was needed, rather than thinking first. But according to the book Rise of the Lich King and this questline, he was forced to become a paladin, and the expectations of him, coupled with his own insecurity, became Arthas' downfall. You see, due to his own insecurity, Arthas was easily pulled into the dark side. But Uther and Jaina both admit that they failed Arthas when he needed them most, and most of the time, they even chose closing ears. Arthas himself stated that maybe he should become a paladin, but Uther refused to listen. Again, I am not saying Arthas was a white or even a grey character, but he was a young man filled with a noble heart, turned to the dark side and died as a villain, abandoned by his loved one and his mentor. And on top of everything, even his right to be judged has been stripped away by the same mentor who failed him in life.
Now, cast him into the maw. Return him to the darkness he served. His eternal suffering awaits.
He was my student.
Remember what he did, and take your vengeance.
Not vengeance. Justice.
No crown, no throne, not even a soul left for judgment. I hated you, hunted you, and with each selfish act became you. That is my burden to bear.
The transition from Invincible into a different version of the Lament of the Highborn was awesome. I saw lots of people pissed off by this cinematic only because Sylvanas took the main stage instead of Jaina and Uther, but for the reasons I have been explaining for minutes, neither Uther nor Jaina had nothing to say. They just didn't feel they had the right to say farewell to Arthas. This was probably one of the saddest moments in the entire Warcraft story. Seeing the young Prince of Lordaeron ended up like this. So, Uther and Jaina will have to live with the consequences of their acts, especially Uther, if he won't decide to wipe out his memories after this cinematic of course. But I doubt he would, because he admitted he failed Arthas, and he knew he was the main reason why there was only a flicker of soul left of Arthas.
But your legacy is at an end. Begone then, Arthas Menethil. May the last whisper of your name fade and be forgotten.
Now, let us talk about Sylvanas, and let me explain why I do not agree with her claiming that Arthas' legacy is at an end. Every character in the room, including Anduin, will remember Arthas. His effect on the lore will remain until the last day. Yes, Arthas is gone, but his legacy will always live with Jaina, Uther, and Sylvanas. Also, again for the reasons I have explained, Sylvanas takes the center stage at the end, and apparently her hatred against Arthas faded when she saw what was left of that sad soul. All she could feel was pity, because, as she states, there was not even a soul left to judge. So, she finally managed to leave Arthas behind at the end. Her ultimate nemesis faded into nothing. But how did Arthas end up like this? As Uther states, his soul was used until its last bit in the forges of Torghast, and probably the essence of his soul was excluded from the process, so Zovaal could place it into Kingsmorn. So, if you are curious how a soul would end up like a 25 anima orb, that is why. Poor Arthas' soul, thanks to Uther, was consumed until its last bit inside Torghast to forge weapons, armor, and dominate Anduin. And our final question for the day. What actually happened to Arthas? Does this confirm that there is actually another plane for the souls to go when they have banished from Shadowlands as their anima fades out? I think this confirmed our theory about the true realm of death, but we also take Steve Denizer's words into consideration before ending up the video. Necromancer has a different meaning in Maldraxxus. They can take a fallen body and infuse it with energy to make a mindless servant, or move a soul from one body to another. But if, say, Draka was killed, they could not raise her from the dead. Her soul would be gone. I actually do not agree with what you said, because, as we have talked in a previous video, there were lots of hints for Shadowlands may actually be a made-up place created to hide the true realm of death. The realm we saw were the mere glimpses of it in the rifts of Kortia. The realm we have been sent to when we die since the first days of Vanilla WoW. That was the place where Arthas went, in my opinion. A realm of endless suffering and darkness. The realm of death. not the realm of fays or so-called vampires. So, that was all for this week, folks. I appreciate the ones who managed to stay until now. Deepest thanks from Art. This was my second cinematic analysis, and I believe this one turned out to be much better than last. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for listening. If you liked the video, please subscribe and put a like. That would mean a lot for me. Next week we will have another cinematic to cover, which will most likely be a cosmic scaled event. So until next week, see you in eternity's end.